So Matt was really the first sales guy in to this new kind of branch out of the company, because the industry seems to be tainted. At least that's my opinion and my experience. What was it like getting used to and training? Like, I know it comes over time. The first have to be pretty nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, for sure. And plus you were sitting there next to me for the first couple.
It's like, you know what the right thing is, you know that this is the right choice. We're not trying to sell smoke and mirrors. We're not asking them to say yes 5 times at the table. We're not just as real as it gets. Doesn't matter, you know, because if somebody's struggling with it, a lot of people are struggling with it, right? All right, guys, check it out. So today I'm here with one of the sales guys for Paramount, part of my team and my friend. His name's Matt Sikora. I'm just going to ask him a couple questions and see how this goes. I don't have anything written down. I have a couple ideas that I wanted to go through and questions I wanted to ask, but pretty much, as always, it's as real as it gets and it's straight off the cuff. So this is Matt Sikora.
Hello.
Awesome. So tell us, a little bit of background about yourself. How did we end up in this seat?
So I joined Paramount in February of 2022. So it's about to be 2 years in the couple months here. It was something that, you approached me about an opportunity of coming to work for you. Something that you and a lot of other people have always said to me throughout my life is that, they thought I would be good at sales. You think I'm good with people, and it would something that, could come naturally to me. And to give it a shot. So I was at a fork in the road in my life at the time to, ready to try something new, ready to start a new career, and it just kind of lined up, and here we are 2 years later.
Heck yeah, we have. So what did you do before this?
So for a majority of the time, I worked in the restaurant industry. I was a store manager at a Starbucks, actually.
Yeah.
I did that for a long time, and then around COVID, that started to go bad. So I took into insurance sales. I was selling insurance.
What kind of insurance were you selling?
So property and casualty insurance, life and health insurance as well. I was working for an agent who worked for Farm Bureau Insurance. It's kind of like a local Michigan insurance company.
Awesome.
I hated it pretty much for the most part, but it was still, kind of like I was saying earlier, that first branch out into sales and trying something new that I was told and started to believe myself that I would be good at, but it just really wasn't for me. So I was looking for other stuff, and you had an opportunity, and I took it. Yeah.
So backing up a little bit, like, we have a mutual friend that we're both very close with, and he worked with me before I even started Paramount. His name's John. Me and John worked together since we were teenagers. We went through a lot of stuff together, man. We still stay in contact every day. But he was a mutual friend of ours, and that's how I met Matt. And Matt was like the guy, like, when we were all in the crew, like, Matt was like the funny guy where it's like, this guy would make us all laugh. He'd make, he'd make the jokes. And, I was like, I always looked at him, I'm like, man, like, sometimes you just see like qualities in people that it's like you bleed out into other people and you make the room a more positive place, right? So it's like, I messaged him, like, hey, I got an opportunity coming up, and it just happened to work where he was in a, like you said, a fork in the road in his life, where it's like, hey, maybe we can make this work and try something out. So we got together, we started kind of bouncing some ideas off each other. And the thing about it, when he came, like, it was kind of the transition of Paramount being a company where I wore all the hats, and like me and John and a couple other guys, Seth, we would sell, and we'd run production, and we would, kind of navigate the entire company. And when Matt came along, it was like, okay, well, we're going to build a sales team with sales trainers and have project managers and actually build a company to scale. So Matt was really the first sales guy in to this new kind of branch out of the company. And at first, I only wanted to hire sales guys with experience. And I interviewed, I don't know how many people, at least 20 to 30 people that were roofing sales guys. And I was like, I don't feel it with any of these guys. So I have to recreate the wheel, and I have to make it work for people that don't have experience with roofing. And how do I do that? So that was something, and I'm still not an expert at it. We're still working together to get this better and create a better system. But Matt was really the first one that came into that kind of a environment where it's like, okay, we're building this to scale. I have to teach somebody. So we started out where he would just kind of shadow me. And I would do the old school. I had a binder with a piece of ice and water, a piece of felt. I'd have my folder, right? I had no technology. There was no sumo quote. There was no company cam. I went in there and kind of just spoke off experience, and that's how I always sold. Like, one, I'm the owner of a company. Two, I've roofed for 11 years. So I know everything that there is to know. Trying to teach it to him, I was like, man, I don't know if this way of teaching is ever going to work, right? So if you're in that position where it's like, okay, I'm ready to stop wearing the hats, I'm ready to stop selling, and I want to bring in people, I always am an advocate of bringing people that fit the personality but don't know the industry, because the industry seems to be tainted. At least that's my opinion and my experience. So when we first kind of got started, what were like the key things you remember, like some of the positives and some of the hardships? Because we've kind of been through both together, right? Like, we've had very frustrating times where it's like, dude, I don't believe in what somebody's teaching me, and I believe I can do it better, and we can tweak it. And then what were some of like the highlights where it's like, when did you get that momentum where you're like, this is clicking and I think I can do really well and change my life?
So, well, yeah, it was definitely an interesting first year.
Yeah.
I used to make a joke with you because I think I can't even tell you how many times you said, like, man, it's not normally like this. We had, because of COVID and quarantine and all that stuff, I think, the industry was just kind of had a crazy year, especially where we are.
Slow year.
And so when I came on, it was like, hey, it's going to be, these are our busiest times of year. You're going to be, so busy, you're not going to know what you're doing and all these other things. And then, the time came and it's just kind of like, we stayed busy. We did the best we could, but it's like, man, It's not really like this. And I remember making a joke to you once where I was like, maybe it's just me.
Yeah.
As soon as I got here, everything went to shit. But, no, so, I guess the hardest thing was, I don't even want to say memorizing or learning the stuff. I actually feel like from a logistics standpoint, roofing is pretty easy to understand once you know all of the parts and how they work together, and that came pretty easy. It's just I guess the hardest part was taking something that I wasn't confident in and still having to portray that confidence to strangers, right? So it's like, even though I could understand it logistically, you maybe like second guessing myself if they had a certain question or something, when I'm sitting down in front of customers or would-be customers, just kind of like building that confidence that comes along with having that experience, right? So that was what took the longest. But once things really started to click, I don't know if I can remember, specifically when that was, but it was just kind of, you can just kind of feel it, where it's kind of in just the way people interact with you too, and you can see how their body language and their face reacts to when you say it and you speak it with confidence and you believe it and they hear you say it, and all of a sudden it's like, man, you just answered their question, you have all the answers, you're the guy, and they're like, I want that guy. And you can see it and feel it in how they react to you and what you're saying and what you're doing. So once you start to see that kind of happen, mentally in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, I got this, like, I'm there.
Yeah.
So it took some time, but now it's
almost natural.
It's almost like I don't even remember before it was that way.
So when you sold insurance, it was more of like, you're on the phone, you're not at a customer's table pitching them, trying to get them to agree with you, right?
Correct.
So the first time and the first few times, you're sitting in front of a customer, and then, coming from humble beginnings like myself, we've never seen $15,000, $20,000. So when you're sliding a proposal that says $30,000, you're like,
right.
Like, you can feel it screech across the table, and it's like, it's almost like the customers can feel that, right? Like, this guy's not confident in this.
Right.
What was it like getting used to and training? Like, I know it comes over time, but the first have to be pretty nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, for sure. And plus, you were sitting there next to me for the first couple too, so I felt like, here I am trying to act like I know everything about something and I'm sitting next to the expert, and I'm brand new at it. So yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking. But I think the thing that helped me build that confidence too, and not, as opposed to with insurance, the biggest difference between selling insurance and selling roofs is that with insurance, you're not necessarily selling a product, so there's not like a history or like success to speak of the product,
like
right?
The value, right?
Exactly. And with roofing, that's not the case, right? So if when I was selling insurance, if I was $20 a month more expensive than the other guy, well, then they're going with the other guy. That bottom dollar is the most important thing. People assume insurance is a negative. They don't want to pay for it. They don't want to have it, or they have a negative connotation towards it. So they're just going to pay the least they can to think they get the coverage they need. and then they're done. Whereas with roofing and roofing systems, I mean, you can sell yourselves, you can sell the company. There's literally a product that you're speaking of that has, you know, backed warranties, histories. I mean, like certainty being around for forever and things like that. So having a actual tangible product to correlate with the price, I think over time made it easier. And the more you see it, the more you get comfortable with it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those first couple times, I mean, I've never, like you said, I've never even had $15,000 before, and now here I am asking someone to give me that for their roof. Right. I mean, it was definitely kind of like a culture shock, kind of.
Yeah.
But and now here we are 2 years later, and we're telling people, you know, $90,000 for their roof, depending on what they want, and that's on the lower end too. Sometimes depending on what they're putting on there. So.
And eventually, it doesn't faze you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what the right thing is. You know that this is the right choice. We're not trying to sell smoke and mirrors. We're not asking them to say yes 5 times at the table. We're not trying to pull a rug over, you know, them, where we're just being upfront and honest. Like, we truly believe that this is the best product and the best service for you. And I think once not just your salespeople, but your entire organization feels that and sees that, I mean, it's so much more momentum when going in, you know, to any appointment, whether it's one-on-one with the customer, a board of people, or interviewing, right, and hiring, recruiting, right? It's like, if people see this on the outside, then it's like, hey, I want to be a part of what you guys are doing, right? Whether it's from a customer or an employee.
Right. And I think too, once you see the company, you know, walk the walk as well too, and not just talk the talk, I mean, that helps build your confidence up as well too, right?
Right.
Because at first, like you said, it's no smoke and mirrors. We're not, you know, pulling the wool over your eyes or whatever. I was really concerned about that in any sales position when people would tell me back in the day, you know, I should sell used cars, and I was like, used car salesmen are sleazebags. Why would I want to do that?
Right. They have that connotation, right?
And I didn't want to do that either, right? So, but once you start seeing like, hey, we stand behind our work, we back up our stuff, and after you're involved long enough to actually see that happen and be the case, and you're not just telling people that, I mean, that helps with your confidence. And I mean, you literally get to the point where you're like, hey, we're gonna do it right, and if we don't, you're still good. So like, literally don't worry about it. You'll never have to worry about this thing again if you hire me to do this.
Absolutely.
That goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I used to say, like, when people would ask me or question me about that stuff, I'd be like, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter if we install the shingles upside down, right? If we install every shingle upside down, it's still warranted. Like, you got me forever, right? So just knowing that, I mean, you're right, it helps. And it helps you, and then that persona helps the customer. The rapport that you build with them helps the customer. So, no, that's cool. What do you think as far as, like, you know, if somebody was just getting into it, like right now, I was just telling them before we turned the cameras on, you know, we're hiring next year for some outside sales reps, and a lot of the applications that I've gotten were from the mortgage industry because the rates being so high. You know, a lot of the companies are having problems, or I don't know if the companies are having problems. I guess I don't work there, but it seems like they're having a money issue, or the market's slow, rates are high, they're not refinancing. So a lot of these positions or these prospects that are coming and delivering resumes, they're from that mortgage industry. And I know, you know, the persona of roofers, right? We're roofers, where we must be stealing deposits, we must be smoking weed on the roof, you know, like overcoming that. Mm-hmm. I mean, did you feel that, like, I mean, I guess you knew us pretty well before that, but you still had to have some kind of like, what would you tell the guys as far as, you know, if they were in the mortgage industry exploring sales opportunities, right? Like, what would you tell them be conscious of, or help them navigate the company that they're going to choose?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say do your research. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, or I guess if that's the right word for it, because I mean, if it wasn't for working with you and knowing you prior to doing it, I mean, I can't say if I would ever specifically sell roofs. Right. So it was, you know, that definitely affected my decision. But I guess I would definitely, say do your research. I mean, I've heard some stories about other companies. I've had customers tell me stories about other companies. I deal with, you know, customers who just bought a roof 10 years ago. It wasn't put on correctly. Here I am telling them they got to replace 90% of their roof, and you know, you spend,
for double the price.
Yeah, for double the price because it's been 10 years, and it's like you see that could have been avoided if it was done right the first time.
Right.
But I would say, do your research. I mean, there's going to be stereotypes and, you know, misnomers about every industry and every company, but if you believe in the product and you know it's not going to put your own integrity at risk working for them, then I would say go for it. But at the same time, I mean, it is, from having zero experience and zero knowledge of the industry, you know, you can't expect it to be insanely lucrative off the start. You know, that typical saying of the first year's learning and the second year's earning. I mean, that's definitely the case.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. Yeah, I think it's very cool, especially for me to watch. You know, this is like, I don't know. I'm sure in past videos I talked about this, but one of the most inspiring things for me to watch is people grow. Where it's like you come in and you don't really know what to expect, and you get comfortable, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, dude, I got this much money in my account, or I'm gonna buy my first house, or like I bought my first car. I'm investing in 401k. I want to talk to your advisor. I'm thinking about buying rental properties. Like for me, that's the mecca, right? Like that is the pinnacle of why I do what I do, is because it's like, dude, I was a shitbag from the trailer park where I had nothing. So I never in my life did I think like I'd be able to help people and, you know, everywhere. I would never thought I would be able to see. I don't think anybody else did either, right? And it just kind of like comes through hard work and progression. But for me to watch people like you do this is awesome. I think it's cool. So yeah. I'm sure you're gonna just
it's pretty cool for me. But that's another thing too, is I mean, you know, from my background in my life, every job I've ever had, people look at me as kind of like a, hey, you're doing this, like, you know, because of the way I look, or tattoos or body modifications or whatever. So
yeah,
you're always gonna have that anyway. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. I mean, I was sitting at an office in the, you know, not a suit, but, you know, in dress wear, meeting insurance customers, and still had the same thing. So it's like, you know, they had the same thought as well too. But really, once you kind of just approach them with confidence, break down those, you know, barriers, break down those stereotypes, tell them like, you know, you're the guy. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter what you did before. Doesn't matter. Yeah. You know, just be that guy.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it. But I am very not by nature a risk taker. Really, like I play things pretty safe. I'm like, you know, I don't, in terms of finances, in terms of everything, like I want to be comfortable. I want to make sure everything's okay before I want to take any risks. So when I first started with Paramount, I had the opportunity to, you know, whenever I was ready, switch from like my entry level pay, training pay, which had a base salary. So whether I was winning or losing in the field didn't really matter. I still had a comfortable flow. Cool. To switching to, you know, like a more commission-based pay where it was, you know, just based off results. And so I took my time to make that jump. And part of that is because we were slow, and, you know, that can weigh on you because you're, you know, scared, right? That you're not going to make any money. You can't pay your bills. I mean, I have a son. I have, you know, stuff that I have to pay for. So that was very risky. Dealing with my mental health, like how I mentally could handle that, man, I don't know. I was at, honestly, such a low point prior to working here. I don't think it could have really got much worse. So it just kind of, I think I was at the point where it just, in my mind, it got to where, you know, there's nowhere to go but up from here. So I couldn't get really any lower. It was pretty low. So, but in terms of taking the risk, and that's part of the reason why I was so safe about it and so concerned, right? And didn't want to make any unnecessary risks because I wanted to build back a foundation before making that jump. But I mean, when things started to go, I remember one day, you know, Erica said, whenever I'm ready, I can switch over to the next pay grade and you know, whatever the case may be. And I remember I went on a couple appointments. I went to this pig in Rochester, man, and it was just huge. And I was like, man, and I just remember thinking to myself, if I could close this job, I went to 2 jobs that day, and I was like, if I close both of these jobs at this new pay schedule rather than what I'm currently at, I could make, you know, X amount of dollars today.
Do you remember what that dollar amount was?
Yeah, it was $7,000.
Right.
And so I did.
Have you ever seen $7,000 in prayer?
Yeah. And so that's what I did. And I remember literally I called my mom on the phone and I was like, Mom, I'm switching. I'm switching full commission. She's like, are you sure about that? And I'm like, Mom, I was like, same thing. If I sell these 2 jobs and I have a good feeling like I want to sell them, I'm going to sell them. You know, I could make $7,000 today. And I mean, yeah, I've never seen that amount of money ever.
And you never look back.
And yeah, never look back. And you know, it is part of that thing. Once you get a taste of it, you're going to always want it. There's always going to be the next level. How do you get to the next level?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily, greed either. It's just progression, yeah. Growth, and, taking yourself to the next level.
Yeah. Clarify some of those things that he was saying, and this is a great story, and I think people get a lot of value. So the way we had it set up was you have an X amount, a low salary, because you're training, right? You're brand new. I'm gonna give you a low salary. Your pays every week is guaranteed. And then I was like, whenever you're ready, then we'll switch you to a commission where you'll make X. And I remember, like, after a few months, the guy's on fire, and I'm looking through his sales, and I'm like, Matt, do you realize, like, you're making this, and if you switch, you would have made this if you would have switched. And I could see the hesitation where he's like, yeah, pretty soon, maybe next month, and then he's finally like, all right, I'm ready, and it's like, as soon as he made that commitment, right, you made a commitment to yourself, saying, you know what, do or die, like, I'm here, I'm ready to roll, and then it was like, all right, now the dog's unchained, and it's, again, that's some of the coolest stuff to see is like, like doubt myself, or like, I got invited to the roofing process conference to speak, right? And I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about? Who wants to learn? What do I know what can I really teach anybody, right? And I started to think, like, maybe I shouldn't. Why? What gives me the right to tell anybody anything, right? And it's like, then a couple people ask me questions, and I'll tell them an answer, and they're like, man, that's great. That saved me so much. It's like, oh, well, maybe that's what I'll talk about. Because if somebody's struggling with it, a lot of people are struggling with it, right? And that's why before this, I was like, just as real as it gets, doesn't matter, like, we're going to get through this, because you never know who's on the edge of, whether it's mental health, whether they're struggling to go to the next level, whether they just need a kick in the ass, or they're at a low point in their life where they're ready to make a change, whether it's roofing or anything else in the world. They just need a little push to get off the cliff and actually run,
right?
And give them that opportunity. So I think that's cool, but I just wanted to clarify how that worked and how that came about and how I seen it from, like, my lens, and to watch it kind of happen.
Right.
It was cool.
No, it was definitely, it was life-changing, for sure.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. What about as so far as, like, I always like the good's great, but like to focus on, a lot of these sales guys are going through hardships as far as, slow seasons, or what if they're selling the same consistent numbers, right? They're selling the same consistent numbers, and they're trying to get to that next level, right? Like what have you seen in your short, you're only 2 years in, right? In your short career, what have you seen besides market fluctuations, because that's out of our control,
right?
But in your own self of, like, sometimes it's human nature to find yourself not in a rut, but just in a place where it's like, there's more, right? And then there's times where it's like, I'm closing this, I don't care what it takes, right?
Right.
Like, how do you navigate through that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think the biggest thing,
like, how do you stay hungry?
The biggest thing for me, that's basically what I was going to get at, is me personally, just the way I am. I've always liked to seek new knowledge, learn new things. I'm always thinking about what the next level is. So, like here we have a retail division, we have a insurance division, or depart, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's like, if one avenue or one well is drying up or becoming too much of the same old stuff, then it makes me more likely and more willing to want to take on and learn other things, right? Whereas before, for the most part now, if I go out on a retail appointment, I get there, it turns out it could be insurance related, or maybe it is insurance related. Most of the times I would just hand that off to our insurance department, and I say, well, I'll get the next, I'll go get the next one that's meant for me. But, then it's, sometimes I'm sitting there and it's, like you said, we're not necessarily stuck in a rut, but I'm stuck in the rhythm of the same old, here, this is this,
same progression,
this, exactly. And it's like, how hard can it be? I can do this, right? So, you got, some storm damage. I'll ask the questions I need to ask, get the information I need to get, but I can be your guy to help you handle this too. And then not only are you learning and developing and growing, but you're also, switching it up, keeping things interesting. I think that specifically is one of my favorite things about this specific job, roof sales, is every day is different, every customer is different, every roof inspection is different. Yeah. So it doesn't really seem to be, like monotonous like other jobs can be. It's exciting. It's dumping rain right now, and I'm about to go walk a roof in a couple minutes here. So every day is different. But I guess just people will know once you get to the point where you never thought you would be there, like me. I never thought I would ever be where I am now. I never thought I'd have made the money that I've made that I have now. You'd be surprised where your mentality and your mind can go. It's almost like there's no limit. Right. So your attitude and your approach towards things just can become like, well, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, man. Give it enough time and I can do that.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome, man.
I don't even know it's like a conscious thing. It's just one of those things where I think it just clicks. It just happens because I mean, really, I never thought I would be here where I am now.
And the beauty of it is too, like once you know sales, like sales is the rest of your life. Like everything you do is selling, right? You're selling, your kid's selling you, trying to get you to have a sleepover, right? Like you're trying to sell somebody to, you know, buy a roof, or your spouse, you're after a female or whatever, you're trying to sell her. And to, you know, so it's like you're getting used to this transaction, verbal transactions, constantly. So it's like even if the roofing world dried up, like you'd have no problem going anywhere and selling anything, right? Because you're just, it's like, hey, show me the pitch, show me what it is, let me know that I'm comfortable, and I can just make this happen, right?
Yeah.
What about the no, right? Like a lot of people. And I struggled with this. I was probably one of the worst of telling customers no, or I just like, hey, I'm not working with you. I find you to be very good at this, right? Where you're just like, we go over your schedule, and it's like, hey, I don't know if you want to do this. I don't know if I want to deal with this guy. You're very good at just saying, you know what, it's not for me. And in a very short time, you've learned who our customer is or your customer is versus who's not. What got you there? What's the no like for you?
So honestly, what got me there is not saying no to one of those customers and then having it negatively impact and affect all of my coworkers more than me. Right. That's what really got me there, because I was new. I was a new guy already. So for a long time, that was kind of like my out. You know, if I made a mistake or didn't do anything, it was never on purpose ever. But you know, like, oh, he didn't know any better. He's still learning. He's doing whatever. But then you get this customer that you just know from the start. They're just a pain in the ass. They don't want to listen to you. You know, I've been on appointments where I'm like, if you know what you need and what's wrong and everything like that, then you know what, really, it's like, what am I even doing here?
What am I even doing here, right?
You know? And so then you sell that guy, and then your project manager's calling you the day of his install, he's like, man, this guy's doing this and that and the other thing. The installer's calling you saying, man, who the hell did you have me do here? You know, our repair tech's going back weeks and weeks after the fact, and it's just like, you know, it's not necessarily my fault, but essentially it is. Right. And so, I mean, now you get to the point now where I know right away from the time I first show up, whether it's based on the actual house itself, I'm like, man, you know, we stand behind all of our work. We're going to own this whole house by the time we're done with this, just because of the shape that it's in right now. Like, you can't, you know, effectively replace its roof without worrying about all this other shit. Right. Structurally, shit's messed up. The columns are bent, and you know, it's like, it's not safe. And the homeowner doesn't want to understand that, and we don't want to own that house, and I don't want to deal with any of that other shit again. Right, so it's just like, no. And I've had people literally, after I've told them no, they change their entire mentality, right? So I think part of it too is, you know, the person who knows it all or thinks they know it all, you know, you tell them no, like, hey, you know, obviously it doesn't look like, you know, we would be the company for you. It looks like you can't trust us to do the type of like work that we're saying we do. So maybe, you know, we should part as friends, and, you know, I wish you the best of luck somewhere else. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, no. Wait. I'm just making sure it's done this way and this way, right? And so there are some that are just being, I guess, stubborn. And I think like one of my first sales with you ever that I sold, the guy was like that. I don't remember his name. But he was just, we had a pitch, and there was a whole process, and it was, because I was new and learning, it was so important that I went through the whole thing. But he was just like, you know, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to hear me, didn't want to do anything, and I just went through the whole thing anyway. And then, you know, essentially, I think then he wanted to deal with you instead of me because he didn't think I knew anything. And we basically just put him in his place, and he ended up selling anyway. So sometimes there are those customers where I would say, The no they can come from two things. It can come from location, building wise, what makes sense for the business, and it can also be, hey, if your company is the type of company that's going to guarantee their stuff for years and there's longevity in your work, do you want to deal with this person maybe for 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or every month for the next 10 years? Like,
Yeah.
nobody's got time for that. So,
or the people that you just can't make happen. Like they're going to write you a 4-star review at best. Right?
Exactly.
But I just think that's unique quality because there's two things that you said. One, the team, right? Like I don't want to put my team through this. So for us, like every Monday we have a team meeting where it's like all functions and everybody gets together. And though it's repetitive, I mean, it's like you're still there and you're interacting with everybody that you work with. So he knows once his sale's over, it goes to the operations team and the project manager and the techs and the crews and supervisors where like they have to deal with, if he misses something on his inspection or undervalues the roof or anything, like there's a ripple effect that goes through, right? And instead of choosing the money where it's like, hey, I can easily sell this guy, I know he's a pain in the ass, but I don't have to deal with it. He chooses like, no, I'm gonna look out for my teammates and I'm gonna look out for the greater good of the business and I'm going to tell this customer no. I think that was, that's huge. And I think, working to that level of integrity is, I mean, I don't want to say it's uncommon because I hope it's not uncommon, but I think it's uncommon in business as a whole. And then two being the responsibility of carrying this job all the way through to the end, and who knows when the end is, right? Like if you notice that a structure is oblong or something's wrong with it, or the siding's wrapped up over the drip edge and there's 2 layers of shingles and shake, and when it gets down to the deck, that all the fascia is going to be 3 inches above and it's not going to be right, or the siding's glued down to the shingles, right? And there's layers on there. And there's going to have to be modifications done beyond just the shingles, and the customer is just like, well, I only want to pay for the roof, right? I just get me through. This is always a big one. Just get me through to next year, right? Just get me through. Or I just want to I don't want to spend all the money, just nail over it. Well, it's like, well, we don't do that. It's like telling the customer, like, I'm sorry, we don't do that. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget. In my early years when I was doing a lot with Angie's List, somebody left me a review. I went to a house, I believe it was an old house, and it had like a flat roof that went up to shingles. And I told him what I needed to do. And the guy was like, no, I don't want you to do that. I just want you to do this. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And he wrote me my first 1-star review on Angie's List. And I was just like, dude, like he wanted me to cut a corner, so I responded. I'm like, sorry, we work with integrity. We're either going to do it right or we're not going to do it at all. I told this customer no because he wanted me to do something that was, I'm going to have to own that, right? Like we're going to have to own this stuff. And I just think that's important because though you're paid commission or the business is still going to earn money, it's like, is it worth it in the end? And once you've done this so many times, you realize sometimes it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Whether it's the person, the structure, or any other anomalies that come in the sales process, it's just like, dude, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, but it does take time because I did struggle with it at first. But then it's like once you rip the Band-Aid off and tell that first customer no, then it's like easy.
Yeah.
But at first you're like, they say, oh well, can you do X, Y? You guys will do X, Y, Z while you're here, right? And I'm like, let me find out about it. But really, it's like no.
Right. No.
We do roofs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you paint the fascia and
Can you reinstall all of my fascia wood and soffit wood? And I'm just like, no. But you're like, well, let me see what I can do. And you're hoping later you can give them an excuse or find a different solution for them without saying no. But sometimes you should just say no.
Yeah.
And like you've taught me and said before too, like, wouldn't you want a carpenter to do that? Like we'll do the roof and we're roofers. That's our profession. Why don't you have someone who's a professional with wood do your wood? Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
So you learn your ways around it and you do things like that, but it does take time. But once you get it down, it's almost like liberating, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you're never gonna have to deal with that headache.
Yeah.
If the appointment was a headache, the way they interact with you, the way they deal with you, the way they're, not listening to you or whatever, I mean, most likely they're going to carry that mentality throughout the entire process, which is just going to be a pain in the ass for everyone. So save yourself the headache and say no off rip.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, sometimes in sales, a lot of people, especially in the beginning, you're afraid to be a little bit assertive. Like you said, well, then I'm just going to say no and walk away. And the customer says, wait. Like that happens when you start to be more assertive. Like you're so confident. You're like, dude, if you're not going to listen to me, then we might as well part as friends, right? Like let's shake my hand, pretend like, whoa, I didn't mean all that. It's like, well, it's like, what do you mean then? Like, what am I doing here? And I think that's another skill that you develop in your tool bag in sales is being a little bit assertive, where we're not pushy, we're not over the table trying to talk you into something, but we are willing to say, hey, listen, like, I'm not begging for business, right? Like, you chose me, I also have to choose you.
Right.
You're interviewing me, but while you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you too.
Yeah.
Right? We need to be common, right? Because if we're not common, then we're just not going to work together, right?
Right. It's like, I would love to do this job, right? Like you get to the house and it's a certain style and we know, we've installed something like it 1,000 times and I tell the customer, I would love to do this job. I know we could do this job amazingly, but only if you let us do it right.
Yeah.
Like that's the big, kind of catch to it all is if you're willing to do it right, then I'm the guy for it. And,
right.
A lot of times some of these houses too, they're big, complicated. I mean, you need the right guy for it. You don't want to roll the dice with a random on something like that, but you also got to understand it. To doing it right means XYZ, which might, lead to money.
Yeah.
More money.
Yeah. More money. Yeah.
That you don't necessarily want to spend, but if you're concerned about getting it done right the first time, then you gotta, just rip off the Band-Aid.
Well, we've all paid more for something than we wanted to pay, right? Like we've all went to the store or went shopping for something we really wanted and paid more than we expected, right? Whether it was a house, a vehicle, box of cereal, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. A phone, that's a great example. Like, I'm willing to spend a little bit more for this upgrade, or hey, I had $1,000 budgeted, but I'm going to push it to $1,200, right? Because I see the value. And that's the same thing as far as, coming to sales and making the customer realize, like, I know 15,000 was your budget, but it's really going to be 18.5. And that's the number. That's what I can do, and we can't win them all. And we don't try to win them all. I mean, there's plenty of roofs here where everybody does just fine, but, oh, that's cool, man. That's cool. All right, so to wrap this up, I just wanted to the last question. I know we kind of touched on it a couple times, but what's one thing to inspiring sales, whether they're older or newer, would you say is fuck, I'm like tripping over my words. Great, man. I'm sure everybody appreciates, like, again, as real as it gets. Like, he didn't know what he asked me yesterday. Was there any questions I should prepare? I was like, nah. We're just gonna go up there and have a conversation, and then that's kind of what we did. So I appreciate you taking the time to be up here and tell a story. And I'd like to do this again, and then maybe we get into a little bit more of like our processes, the importance of follow up. What technology are we using? What's our protocol as far as when we get to the job? Like what steps do we do? What resources do we use?
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful too. For companies, but I think for now, just trying to help those salespeople feel a little bit more comfortable, or actually hear a story of like the beginning 2 years later. So,
I'm in.